Good afternoon, folks, or good morning. Welcome to today's webinar, which is all about working with offline photos. And I shall explain what that means momentarily. Before we get to that, if you're listening to us on Facebook or YouTube, welcome and thanks for joining. Feel free to put questions in the comments, either on YouTube or Facebook, and they'll come straight through to me. If you're in our webinar room and you want to ask a question, you can do so just in the Q&A tab up at the top there. That just keeps it separate from the main chat, and it helps me just make sure that I'm not missing any questions or trying to respond to as many as possible. If you want to hide the chat, you can do so just by clicking that little down arrow, and then that will give you a bit more real estate on screen. All right, so let us begin. You might notice I'm slightly croaky today. So good news is that this is a relatively short webinar, so hopefully I'll be able to last the time that we're going to spend, which will probably be between 30 and 40 minutes. So we definitely don't need the full hour. I've got the mute button at the ready for any coughs or sneezes. It's just a cold. I'm not suffering with you know what, so no worries there. Okay. So the subject of this webinar is working with offline photos. What does that actually mean? Well, first of all, we need to know a little bit about the way a catalog works in Capture One, what a preview is, and what are the benefits. So that's really the three subjects that we're going to look at today. So first of all, what is a preview and why do we have it? So we need to dig in a little bit to the catalog structure. So if we right click up the top here, we can actually find our Capture One catalog. So this is the catalog that I have open currently in Capture One. And we can see it has some size. It's what, 12 odd gigabytes, but this catalog has 6,000 odd pictures in it. So catalogs were designed to have a relatively small data footprint, even if they stored a large number of images. And I've got to be a bit careful when I say stored a large number of images, because this current catalog that we're looking at is based on what we call referenced images. So the catalog is on my internal hard drive. As you can see, it's in the pictures folder, like so. And the pictures, or the actual images themselves, are on this external hard drive. You can see here, this little SSD drive, which we're going to unplug later and show it to you so you actually believe me. So catalog on the internal hard drive, photos on an external hard drive. Why would I want to do that? First of all, it's a laptop, so I have a limited amount of space on my hard drive, 500 gig or whatever. Maybe it's a terabyte, this one, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's not feasible to store tens of thousands of pictures on my internal hard drive. Nor would I probably want to, because obviously if the hard drive fails, hopefully I will have a backup, but there's some element of additional safety having the pictures nice and safely on an external hard drive, which of course I can also back up online as well. Now, purely 99% of the time for performance reasons, then inside this catalog is something called a preview file. And a preview file is a smaller version, just a JPEG essentially, of every single photo that you import into your catalog, or if you were shooting tethered, we create this small preview file. And the reason being is that when you're browsing through a collection of photos in Capture One, so I'm just scrolling through these, that the response is nice and snappy, and you don't have to wait for Capture One to go and look for the raw file, read the data on the raw file. Imagine if it's 100 pixels, 100 megapixels, that would be kind of slow, and then build the preview that you see in Capture One's viewer. So this way, it's super speedy to move through a large collection of pictures. So it's really about performance, but there's also some other benefits too. Of course, when I zoom into 100%, Capture One then needs to go and look for the raw file so that we can see the photo in all its high resolution glory. So that's really the first reason why we have previews, for performance. Just a quick check on questions in case anyone missed anything. Sebastian was saying, is offline working possible with sessions? No, or only with catalogs? And that's a good question, because with a catalog we have our centralized database, That means as well as having our previews stored tucked inside here, we have adjustment data, we have metadata like camera information, lens, aperture, keywords, all that kind of stuff. And then we also have additional Capture One related data like magic brush masks, luminosity masks, other masks that you've drawn by hand and so on, are all like little data files that relate to each of those photos. So it's just really a big smart database. But with a session, it's not a centralized database. The adjustments live alongside the pictures in a little subfolder next to them. So it's not quite the same workflow, but a good question. So not true for sessions, but sessions do indeed create a preview in exactly the same way. But instead of it being a centralized database, you'll see a folder called Capture One that sits alongside the photos that holds that preview data. So it's true of sessions in that way, but the way they're stored is different. One thing before we move on to another kind of benefit of previews and the whole offline thing. Quick cough break. So I did hit the mute, so hopefully didn't burst your eardrums. Preview size is super important. So if we go to Capture One's preferences, and then the third tab, image, then you'll see preview image size here, like so. And this really defines on the long edge, the number of pixels, or if you like, the length of pixels on the long edge that the preview image will be that we create. Now the size of this is important depending on the main, if you like, monitor that you're working on with Capture One. So where you're looking at the viewer, if you like, in Capture One. So what you're aiming to do is set the preview size to, and if we keep it simple, to the maximum dimensions of your monitor. So if you had a 4K screen, we would pick 3840. If you had a 5K screen, like a 5K iMac, you would pick 5120. If you're just on a 2K screen, then you would pick 2560. So that's really important. By default, it's set to 2560, which isn't going to be big enough. What's going to happen if it's too small is that when you flick between pictures, Capture One will actually then have to recall the raw file each time, and it would make adjusting sliders a bit slower and all those kinds of things. So make sure your preview size fits. Couple of another thing to be aware of is that if you change your preview size subsequently, it's only going to have an effect for new images that are introduced to your catalog or session. So what you can do is regenerate the preview. So if I just do a shift select on this small collection of pictures here and say image, regenerate previews right here. Let's bring up the activity window. You'll see Capture One is now regenerating. Now, you don't need to sit and wait for this to finish, which is often the case. You can go ahead and open up any shot, and then Capture One will start prioritizing the preview for that particular shot. So please don't sit here and wait for that activity bar to finish. It's often a misunderstood action of Capture One that you somehow have to wait for preview generation to finish. You do not. So when you import a bunch of photos into a catalog, don't sit and wait. You can actually go start moving through and culling, rating, editing, etc. straight away. So please don't wait for that to finish. But really important to set the right preview size for maximum performance. Okay. So question from Owan. We're going to come to that, don't worry. I have quite a few raw files on my Windows desktop which I've been working on. How do I move those, keeping all the changes? The really important thing is that you do any move operations inside Capture One. That's super important. Just checking questions over here as well. Jeff, I will answer your question at the end. Good point. What happens if the preview size is bigger than the picture? There's actually no detriment to having too big a preview size. The only detriment really, it takes a bit longer to make the preview. But on a faster machine, you won't really notice it, to be honest. But for me, there's no point whacking this up to 5K because I don't have a 5K monitor. Someone said earlier, but even if you do have a 4K monitor, but you have, relatively small viewer, isn't that a waste of time? And I said, well, not if you view things in full screen, because then you are pretty much spanning the whole monitor. So consider that you might want to view stuff in full screen as well. Can you minimize the activity window? Yeah, you can just close it. So you've got activities here, you can just shut it down, move it to another monitor, just ignore it basically. You'll have the spinning wheel up here in the top corner where you can actually see if anything is happening, or is it under here? I can't remember. Yeah, just there. So you'll know if something is happening, but you can pretty much ignore it, Keith. Gussie says, is there any reason why the pictures are soft in the viewer? They shouldn't be. That was like a pretty old bug. So I would check which version of Capture One you have. 14.4 is the current release. So just check that you're not on something older on this release cycle, because there was a bug at some point that had some fuzzy viewers, and also I think 14.3 we had an issue with some thumbnails as well. So just make sure you're on the current release. All right, so what other benefits do we have as well? So like working on offline, because offline we've said, or I've said a few times now. So what does that actually mean? So the whole point of this catalog database as well is that you can work on your pictures to a large extent without needing access to the raw files. So let's go ahead and eject this SSD. So you can see it's listed this one here in the folders till it's green. That means it's online. That's the point of having this little green tag here. And then I'm just going to eject that like so. Now instantly this goes red and we get a warning triangle everywhere else. I'm going to disconnect it so you don't think I'm cheating, and show you the hard drive like so. It's just a little Samsung, awesome drives, Samsung T5. Yeah, 1 terabyte. Can't recommend them highly enough. So now this is offline. So does that mean I can't do anything? No, it certainly doesn't. I can still go in, I can still edit my pictures, no problem at all. I do have a couple of restrictions where the raw data is necessary. I've counted 2. Well, there's technically 3, but the first one, if I make a new field adjustment layer I want to do a luma range, I can't, because we need the raw data to be able to calculate that accurately. Equally, if I grab the magic brush and do a squiggle, I can't, because the image is offline. But everything else is up for grabs. So you can go ahead, you can play around with your shots, make edits without necessarily having the weight of the hard drive with you. You can also go ahead and make virtual collections and add pictures to virtual collections, because these collections also belong in the catalog structure. So if you want to make a collection and pick out some shots that you want to edit later on or print out or whatever, then you can happily do that without needing access to the raw data. Okay. Now, often we're asked, okay, well, let's say I edit, a whole bunch of pictures. I'm going to go through and make loads of adjustment. Is there some kind of lengthy synchronization thing that happens when I reconnect my hard drive? No, there isn't. So why? Because again, all those adjustments are stored in that centralized database. So there's no synchronization that has to happen. Capture One is non-destructive. So that means we never change the raw file. We never edit the data in the raw file. So we're just creating a set of instructions, which is showing you how it's going to look in Capture One. So now if I just plug the little Samsung back in again, should connect pretty quickly. Warning triangles go away. That's it. So it's completely seamless in that respect. All right. Let me just check for questions. I think we're good. That one's been answered by, I think, Victor, who's online. Let's see, just checking for questions there. Sean, I'll come back to yours at the end. Okay, so I haven't forgotten about you. All right, good, we're on track. How do I know where the raw file is? That's just a note I've got in front of me. So let's say you've got a bunch of pictures stored on not just one external hard drive, but a couple of external hard drives. You don't have to limit yourself to storing your pictures in one location. You could have some on external hard drives, you could have some on internal, you can move them between external, internal. We'll show you that as well, because that was a question that came up earlier. But you could have more than one image stored on a bunch of different drives. So let's say you're working in a collection. Here we go. So we've got a bunch of different shots here as an example, and you could have tons of collections. I have loads of collections on my personal catalog that I tend to work in. But let's say, you know, all my drives are offline. I don't have them connected, and I need to do something like exporting, Luma mask or whatever, where I actually need access to the raw file. There's a really handy thing that you can do, which is right click and say show in library. So if I click this here, Capture One will go straight to that collection and highlight the picture like so. So I can see, okay, this particular shot is on Traveler SSD, so I need to plug that one in. But if I had my images spread across 3 or 4 drives, then instantly I know which drive I need to hook up. So if you are, you know, not capable of hanging all the drives off your computer at the same time, then that is an option that presents to you as well. Okay, how could you unintentionally make something offline? So let's talk about moving stuff around. Let's just go back to Blake's collection. So we've got 3 different folders here, Blake, Blake, and other. And let's say I want to move some pictures around. So how should I do that? Now you could be tempted to go into the Finder or Windows Explorer. Let's just find this location, right click and say show in Finder or Windows Explorer. And then I could start dragging pictures around in the Finder or Explorer. Don't do that. Why? Because a catalog, it's not a file browser. It's not constantly monitoring the collections that are present in your catalog. So it's not always scanning and looking, because that would be a huge performance detriment, especially with larger catalogs. It would be fine with if you just had 10 folders, then it wouldn't be any performance issue at all to constantly monitor those folders. But with larger catalogs, it would be, you know, completely unfeasible. So you shouldn't start dragging images around in Finder or Explorer. You should do all of that in Capture One, which is dead simple and will save you a whole bunch of time. So if I drag this file here and stick it in this one, like so, we get a warning. It says the selected image will be moved. So it's physically moved on disk, and away we go. And now we can find that shot, there it is, hanging out in this folder where it shouldn't be, like so. And if I want to move it back, then I can do so. If you don't want this warning to come up, because it can get annoying, then you can just say, don't show this message again, and move. If after consequently realizing that you do like that warning message, and I do personally, because if you can be a bit sloppy with a Wacom and you're accidentally dragging folders around, it's nice to know, oh, I accidentally dragged a folder. So if you go into preferences and warnings, you can always turn it back on if you wish. So it's the first one in that particular list. Last tool tab here, like so. Well, not the last, because this window is a bit small by the looks of it. There should be a plugin window. Yeah, plugins, like so. So this one here, warnings, uncheck the first one. Same occurs for folders. You shouldn't also drag entire folders to different places. You can also move that quite nicely around as well. So if I grab other and just drag this into here, Capture One is going to move the entire folder. If we look at it in Finder itself, you can see that's where the other folder is sitting, like so. If we want to bring it back out, then we can just drag it to the top and it's done. So any move operation like that, you just simply need to do inside Capture One. Now there was a question earlier about if I want to move edits from, images from one place to another and keep the edits. Well, let's say you wanted to actually move some pictures to the internal hard drive. How would I do that? Because right now, Capture One let's just close the collections for a second. Capture One's only aware of my Traveller SSD hard drive. It's not aware of my internal hard drive or anything else because I've never imported from that location. So Capture One doesn't know about it. So what we can do is hit the plus button in folders. And let's go to pictures and we're going to say new folder. And let's just call this Blake Pope Others. Blake's one of our ambassadors, if you didn't know. And hit create and then add. Very important. Don't cancel it. Say add. And now we've got another folder that Capture One is aware of, like so. So what I can simply do, if I wish, I can drag, let's just drag a few JPEGs so it's nice and lightweight. I can drag these 4 JPEGs and move them physically across there, like so. So now I've got these 4 JPEGs on my internal drive, like so. You can see them there. So if that location doesn't exist on your hard drive, then of course you can build it and move it across. So that's one method. Let's say I was taking this laptop over there on a trip and I wanted to bring some images with me to edit, but I didn't want to carry the hard drive because my setup at home is I have a double enclosure, 1 drive of data, 1 drive of backup. It's a big bulky thing. I don't want to carry that with me. But if I wanted to do some editing, then I could easily transfer them over to my internal hard drive. And then once I've come back home, I can easily then drag them back to their external location, like so. Helps if you select all of them, David, like so. So now they've just come back out. The only disadvantage of that is then I've then got this kind of useless folder tree here, which I don't need anymore. So there is another method. So notice we can see there's this little icon here called in catalog. And what we can do is take a reference file. So these are called reference files because Capture One is referencing them at their location. And we can turn them into managed files. And what a managed file means is that it actually sits and lives inside the Capture One catalog. So if we take, let's just take a couple of raw files. Let's take these 4. And I'm going to drag them over to the in catalog icon like so. And now they've got moved inside the catalog. Oh, there's some old crap. Let's delete that. That was a test shot for a tethered webinar ages ago. Let's put that in the catalog trash. So now these photos are sitting inside Capture One 21. Now on a Mac, this is a packaged file. I think that's the right word to call it. So if I right click and say show package contents, please don't do this and mess around with the internal contents of your catalog because you will mess it up. So this is what's sitting inside here. We've got loads of catalog backups, as you can see under originals. If we've got some weird folders here, we'll probably eventually find the raw files. So they are now sitting safely inside, let's just go back, Capture One 21. For those of you on Windows, this is actually a folder with kind of that open architecture. But please don't go in there and start messing around because you're going to corrupt your catalog. I'm just showing you for demo purposes only. So now, even if I eject that hard drive once more, let's get rid of this. So now you can see this hard drive is offline. Unplug once more, but I can still go in. I can, let's just turn this to black and white so we can see that it's definitely edited. I've come back home. I'm connecting my huge bulky hard drive back up again. You get the idea. So this will quickly come online like so. And now I can copy or move, sorry, not copy, move these back to where I want them, like so. And now if we look in this folder, you can see it's black and white. So those adjustments are coming with it. But if I started, you know, messing around with moving things outside of Capture One, there's a high chance that this isn't going to go smoothly. But if you do accidentally do that, can you repair the mistake that you have made? And yes, you can. Let's just check on a question. Let's see. Raphael says, I use a MacBook on travels, but Windows computer in the office. Pictures on an external disk are not compatible between computers. They should be, but you would need to format the external disk as Windows FAT32, which I'm pretty sure will work, but performance-wise on a Mac it's going to suffer a little bit. But you could try that. Just checking for other questions. Keith, I saw you had a question, but it was answered, so that's good. Other options, so we had a few questions this morning about people traveling with different computers. I mean, performance-wise, we could argue that the best performance is to have your catalog on the internal drive and photos either also on the internal drive or on an external. However, depending on the speed of the connected storage and how it's connected, like if I opened a catalog directly from the SSD, I wouldn't see any noticeable performance change. So if you've got good speedy external storage and it's connected via a fast connection, this is USB-C, I don't think it's Thunderbolt, but it's USB-C, then you're not going to see any performance detriment. So there's nothing to stop you walking a hard drive from computer A to computer B and opening up the catalog. Works absolutely fine. Obviously you want to make sure that was backed up somewhere, but there's no reason why you can't do that whatsoever. James says exFAT might be a better format to use. That's in answer to Raphael, so try that. Sorry, I'm a bit out of touch with my Windows disk format, so yeah, give that a go. So yeah, if you are traveling between computers, that's also another way. Or I saw my colleague answered, you can also export EIPs from one place and then import those to another place. And the EIP file, which you've seen on here, contains all the adjustments as well. So there's a few ways of doing it. You can merge catalogs, kind of bunch of different things. A little bit out of scope for this webinar, but it is possible. But the easiest way is to have catalog and images on a small external drive like that. That little one's a terabyte, which is pretty beefy, and you can easily walk that between different machines, no problem whatsoever. So that's reference to managed and managed to reference. So nice and simple. So how could you unintentionally screw something up? Well, let's do it. Thank God for that mute button, eh? Right, let's just find, okay, we've got a bunch of JPEGs in this folder. Let's find something that's easily identifiable. Let's go tasty nachos, why not? Let's right click and say show in Finder. So that's this one here. So we're gonna do the wrong thing and we're gonna move tasty nachos to the other folder, like so. Immediately it says it's offline. Oh dear, what am I gonna do? Well, we can right click and we can say locate. You can just see it next to my head. And then we can need to go and find where it is. Now, hopefully you can remember where it is. You might have to search. That could be one way to do it. But otherwise, I think I can remember where I put it. Actually, where did I put it after all that? Blake Pope, other, so it's this one here, Massamore, number 695. And say open, it's going to disappear from that collection and now be present somewhere in this collection. It's just behind my head. Let's just reverse that so you can see it. Like so, tasty nachos now in that spot. Hopefully you can see that's a whole lot more effort than just doing that, drag and drop. So there's absolutely zero benefit to trying to do those things in the Finder or Windows Explorer. You'll just get tied in knots and have to go through that locate process. Same thing applies for folders. Let's do a stupid thing and move this folder in Finder. Now the folder or every single image is offline, so we can right click and say locate. And we can go to, where is it? There we go, demo catalog, demonstration images. Scroll down too much and find it down here. So as you can see, that was a bit of a pain to go through that process. It's much easier. Again, drag and drop like so. Simple. Good. I think we're almost there, actually. I'm just going to have a quick peek through the questions. Another advantage to this, which I forgot to mention earlier, this is a way to work with an external editor. So for example, if I sent this catalog, like just zipped it up and stuck it on Dropbox or WeTransfer or something like that, they could open it, they could go through, they could do some editing with the limitations that we spoke about, send me that catalog back, I open it back up, and then all the adjustments are there, which were done with my external editor. So if you do want an external editor to help you, or if you want to send, a catalog to a friend, what do you think of my shots? Any ideas for adjustment, or do you have any good styles that you could apply? Then this is a way to easily transfer lightweight catalog without having to send raw files. So even if you sent 50 shots, 50 raw files would kind of get quite fat quickly. Catalog with 50 pictures in it, that's tiny, that's nothing whatsoever, but they could see them, they could edit them, they could whiz them back. Happy days. So that's a good way to do it. Gareth, how do I move my catalog from an internal C drive to an external? Easy. I do it all the time, because what I do, this catalog here actually, let's just close it for a second. This catalog is just something that sits on, you can see some ancient catalogs here, that sits on the external hard drive. And then what I do is I maintain this catalog. It's like my master demo catalog and so on. And then every time I do a webinar, I drag it from the external hard drive to the pictures folder. Let's just put it in documents like that. And now you see it's going across. This one's 12 gig, but it doesn't take long to do. And then I just simply open it, and that's it. So it's nothing more complicated than that, Gareth. It's just you move the catalog, because the catalog knows where your images are and the hard drive that they're on. So it doesn't really matter where the catalog is. So, and the reason why I do this is that it means every time I do a webinar, of course, I screw around with the catalog, I adjust some images, I move things around. So it's kind of, messed up, but then I've always got the master, if you like, which is untouched. So we'll just let this guy finish, and then we can open it back up. And we're done. So now double click, and it's open, and it's referencing those pictures like so. So it's really as simple as that. I mean, I think the best thing I can say is that consider this is a document. It's actually referred to internally as a document. So the catalog is a document. The session is a document. Like you would open a document in Word, you're opening a catalog in Capture One. So if you wanted to open that Word file from another disk, you would just move the Word file. This is exactly the same. We're just putting that catalog document wherever we want. The catalog knows where the images are, which hard drives they're on, and so on. So where that catalog sits in that respect doesn't make any difference. Okay, I think if I haven't missed anything, that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to say about previews, offline files, moving stuff around in today's webinar. So I'm going to have a look at the questions, and let's see. So good one. Michael, hopefully I just answered that. Why do you move files inside of Capture One but catalogs outside? Well, the catalog, as I said, it's a document. It's like a Word document. So like you would move the letters and words and paragraphs around inside Word, the actual document, the Word document, doesn't matter where that is. Same for a catalog. Now, obviously, if I put this catalog on a super crappy USB OneDrive spinning at 2000 RPM, then the performance is going to be crap. But because it's on a super speedy USB-C SSD drive, there's no perceptible performance drop. So just think of that. Oh, that's a good, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce this. Hurabicundus. That's my best effort, I think. Better to keep catalog on an SSD than an old-fashioned hard drive. Does it? Same apply to the raw files. You know what? I wish I had Alex here, our product manager, because he went through this painful process of transferring all his images to solid state. And I'm not sure if it actually made much difference at the end of the day. Someone might know better than me, but to be honest, if your operating system and applications and etc. is all on an SSD, that makes a massive difference. For the actual raw pictures, as long as it's not, you know, an ancient hard drive, then I don't think it matters. I have my my own pictures on 2 external 3.5-inch drives, but they're connected by USB-C, so the read-write speed is pretty good, and I don't notice any performance deficit compared to the SSD in Capture One. So I wouldn't think there would be that much difference, but for your internal hard drive, if that's a spinner, it makes a massive difference. I mean, I have an old MacBook Pro and an old iMac, which I converted from spinning hard drive to SSD, and it's you know, chalk and cheese. It's a huge difference. So if you can invest in SSD, it makes a difference. And something which, you know, aside to that, when you're copying data to and from an SSD, it's also super speedy. So Barry, I work in sessions. Where does C1 store the previews? Yes, it's within this, the folder associated with the session. So catalog has that centralized database. Sessions, it sits alongside the pictures, which is why there's not really that offline workflow with sessions. Abbott, good answer from Abbott. SSD should help with quickly navigating among images. I agree. SSD are generally more reliable than HDD as well, and the cost has gone down a lot as well. So I think when these 3.5-inch drives die that I've got under my desk, I'm going to chuck them out, because it's also a big enclosure. It's got a fan in it, probably uses more power. So to have a couple of little rinky-dink SSD chips just makes a whole lot more sense, to be honest. Let's see, just checking in the questions. Oh, lots of questions came in. Okay, what's the maximum number of files that can be in a catalog? It's really hardware dependent. So if you had an old machine with a crappy hard drive, less. If you have a super speedy M1 Mac with SSDs all over the place, a lot more. So there really is no best practice. I mean, performance has improved dramatically throughout this release cycle, like 14.4. Increase Windows loading speed of a collection by about 400 to 600%. So that's a massive increase in this release. So if you're on Capture One 8 compared to Capture One 21, it's going to be a massive difference. Even Capture One 12 compared to Capture One 21, it will be a massive difference for catalog performance. So don't base your assumptions on old news, if you like. Try it out for yourself. We answered that. Jeff was asking, and I think this relates to Gary BZ, question as well. Is there any reason to bring sessions into a catalog at some point? This is something I do, so I tend to work in sessions when I'm moving around, and then I import the sessions into a catalog when I'm done with it. And Gary, that would work for you as well. If you want an overview of all your sessions, then you can say File, Import, Session, and you just need to point to the session DB of your particular session. But important note, the database of the session and the catalog do not talk to each other after that point. So if you make an adjustment in the session, it won't be reflected in the catalog. So think of it as an archival process. Sean said, I try to export the TIFF DNG RAW that I processed, and it exports the unedited file. I found that I can only export image by JPEG. Yeah, Sean. So if you wanna export the RAW file with edits, then you're looking at an EIP. Remember, different RAW converters have completely different processing engines, so you can't edit a picture in Capture One and open it up in Adobe Camera Raw, for example, and expect it to look the same, because the languages don't compute, if you like. So you can export as an EIP, which you can send to someone and they can open it in Capture One, but you can't embed raw data into a DNG file and expect that to open in another application. George says, can you comment on using a cloud folder for originals? You can. I would just be diligent, I would say. So if you're storing your catalog on Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that, where I've seen it go sideways is that, let's say I open the catalog on my computer, I do some stuff, Dropbox needs to sync up. If I close Capture One before, or if I, shut my computer down before Dropbox has finished its synchronization, I go to another machine and try to open that catalog in Dropbox, then it goes sideways. So you can do it, but you just have to be diligent and make sure you don't do anything stupid with the cloud service. Make sure it's synchronized before you shut down. Does C1 write image edit into the XMP files? Mike was asking. No, it doesn't. You can write. You can set it as an option to write metadata into XMP files. But XMP was never designed for image data. It was only, or editing data. It was only designed for metadata like keywords, camera data, and so on, copyright. So we didn't adopt writing image data in there because it's not actually a suitable format to hold things like layer information, layer masks. You can't write that into an XMP file, unfortunately. So no. Anchor, we answered your question. That was about cloud folders again. When the previews are being created, some settings are being applied. Where are those settings stored? Well, default settings in Capture One. So if let's just make has this been edited? No, let's reset this. So this is the default of Capture One, and the only defaults really that happen, base characteristics, so that would be the camera profile. There will be some sharpening and noise reduction applied, which every single RAW converter does. And there will also be some kind of curve applied. This is a Fuji camera, so it's also got film simulations. If you really don't want any of that, you would need to choose linear response and get rid of sharpening and put all noise reduction down to 0. But you're basically making a whole lot more work for yourself, to be honest. There's no real benefit in doing that. But that's, if you like, the defaults. Craig has a question that I also have. Oh, John says, Craig has a question that I also have. When I do a travel shoot and I use my laptop and utilize a new travel catalog, upon return to my main studio with a Mac Pro and my large catalog, what's the best way to combine them? I've used differing methods over the years. What's the best now? Well, I guess the easiest way to, how would I do that? That is a good question. I find it easier with sessions, to be honest, because I just import the sessions. But if you wanted to stay in a catalog workflow, which I also understand, I would say, imagine this is your main computer. You would say you would connect your hard drive. Did you say it was on a hard drive? Use my new travel catalog and that was the best way to do it. Yeah, well, I would say if it's on an external hard drive, that's going to make your job easier, because you would say File, Import Catalog, Capture One Catalog. You would point to the catalog. I'm not going to import this catalog into itself. God knows what will happen then. Let it import, and then of course your travel images will still be sitting on an external hard drive. Then you could move them onto the main Mac, as you saw we do earlier. I think that would be the far easiest way to do it, I would think. So try that, John. Could you please explain the best workflow to edit pictures stored on a NAS through a local network? It's wholly dependent on the speed of your NAS. I would say, I mean, you've kind of answered your own question, use the NAS as archive only. Lots of people have success with editing off NAS. Some people don't. So it depends a lot on your network speed. So if you've got good network speed, fast read-write access, it's just like working off a hard drive. If you have poor network speed and poor disk read-write access, you might find it's not good. But then you could easily do this method. You could have like a editing folder here, so, or a work folder, work in progress, and then when you were done you could dump it across to the NAS, and then this way you're going to get the benefit of speedy access of working internally but not filling up your hard drive with loads of pictures, and then when you're archiving it you could then move it to the NAS drive. I think that's what I would do personally, and it also means if you're not attached to the NAS you could still have access to your work in progress stuff. So that's what I would do, Cyril. Can you change a session into a catalog? Sebastian was asking. No, but you can import a session into a catalog and then it kind of becomes a catalog. There is some resources on that. Pretty sure the webinar Managing Your Capture One Catalog has a bit about, oh no, it's sorry, working with sessions. So the webinar on YouTube, working with sessions, or on our Learning Hub, there's a bit at the end of that which talks about importing into catalogs. So have a watch of that, and then that will should clear your mind on that one. Okay, I think that's almost it. Cyril, we answered your question. Landon says, I found that working with a catalogue and iCloud storage works well. Good con from George. If you don't have internet access, then you're screwed, of course. But you do have a local copy on your drive, which in theory, once you have internet access, will update. But this is, you know, where it can be an issue. But if you have success, that's good. I think some cloud services are better than other. Abbott, that's also a good idea. For travel, I find it easy to use a managed catalog on the road. Then I import the managed catalog into the main at home and finish by dragging the new images out of the catalog onto the main library. David described this earlier. That's also a great idea. So actually, when you're on the road, when you import images, where's the import window? So you would say import copy into catalog. So that's making them managed. So essentially what you've got when you come back is you have your catalog with all your travel images stuffed into it. You move that onto your main computer and import, and then you would drag out the managed files into whichever location you want. So that's actually a really good idea as well. And last comment from Matthias says, have you experienced a corrupt catalog moving between drives? How would you fix that? I haven't actually. I mean, I do this 2 times a day every week and it's never corrupted. But if it did corrupt, I've got a backup. So then I'm not worried about it. So backup is key. It's easy on a Mac because Time Machine is just backing up every hour periodically. So that's just really the easiest way to do it for me. But I've never had that corruption. It's not, you could be really unlucky, like as you're copying, power cut or something like that. But the original is still there, because if you're moving it from a different hard drive, it's only the copied one that's going to be screwed up. Will the managed files, oh hi Craig, will the managed files be seen accessible from within the managed catalogs? Yeah, exactly. So they will just literally sit, you'll see them inside here. So the nice thing about the managed catalogs is that they're entirely portable. So you can just move them from computer to computer, from hard drive to hard drive. The only real disadvantage with managed catalogs is, of course, let's pretend this one was managed, is it's limited to the size of the hard drive that it sits on. So this catalog, if this was a managed catalog, would be limited to a couple of 100 gig, and then it would be full up. But if it's for small catalogs, for moving around, then managed actually works super, super nice. And the ability to go manage to reference is also pretty easy as well. But just be aware, image files are pretty big, especially if you've got 50 megapixel, 100 megapixel cameras and so on. You will run out of hard drive space pretty quick. But for smaller catalogs and for portability, it's an excellent solution. Whew. All right. I think that's it. That was a lot of questions. Well done, gang. You were very responsive today. Randy, hey Randy, can you say that one more time about when on the road and putting images in the catalogue? Yeah, so let's try and so let's say we're on the road. We've got a new catalogue and it's going to be a managed catalogue. Let's store this on an external hard drive. Let's try and do the workflow. So it's on my external hard drive, like so. So we've got a brand new managed catalog. We're going to import some images. There we go. Let's grab that one. And we're going to copy it into the catalog. Let's just reset all of this naming business so it's not screwed up. So it's going to be inside the catalog. So import images. There we go. We've got one image inside the catalog, like so. We've come back home. We've had a fantastic trip. Let's close this catalog down. I'm going to make another catalog, so I've got a feeling that image belongs in there. Doesn't matter. Let's just do that anyway. So we've had a fantastic trip. We've got our managed catalog sitting there quite nicely. So we're going to say File, Import Catalog, Capture on Catalog. I'm going to point to the managed catalog and say Import. If you get duplicates, excuse me, you actually get a warning like this, which is quite nice. So which one would you like to keep? The existing, the one that I'm going to import, or both of them, and then it will make another variant. So let's just say imported, like so. So now we've got our shot. So what's the date today? It's the 13th of October, is it? Oh, because it was already existing, so it didn't do it properly. So I should have done a new catalog. Hang on. Screwed up that demo. So let's make a new catalog. Let's just call this at home catalog. And we're going to put this in the pictures folder, like so. We're going to import that catalog. Get it right this time, David. It's on my external hard drive, the managed catalog, and say import. And there it is in catalog, like so. So we've successfully imported this image into the in-home catalog, and then I could drag it to whatever location I wanted to. Now this catalog didn't have any others, but if we made it aware of my pictures folder, and I just write trees, like so, then I could get that from a managed to a reference, like so. Hope that makes sense, Randy. So that's actually, thanks to Abbott, a really nice way to do it. So if you're not going to shoot more than the size of your hard drive on the road, using a managed catalog could actually be a really nice solution. Just make sure you back it up as well, like everything else. Phew. Right, before I lose my voice, again, great questions, everybody. You've expanded the scope of the webinar quite nicely into things that probably wasn't going to be on the list, but that's fine. Next week, there's no webinar, but there is a live session with our ambassador, Paul Reefer, which we're going to do on location, which is destined to be a disaster. But hey, what could possibly go wrong trying to live stream from the side of a cliff? But we'll give it a go, and we'll try and see what we can do. But that's the plan for next week at least, and I might have more of a voice then, and we'll see what happens. So take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and see you all next week from a windy cliff top, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Take care. Bye.